She's editor-at-large at National Review Online and an award-winning journalist. She recently joined me to talk about new HHS rules governing faith-based adoption and foster care, as well as her new book, a devotional titled A Year with the Mystics, Visionary Wisdom for Daily Living. Here's my interview with Kathryn Lopez. Kathryn, before we get to A Year with the Mystics, which I do want to talk about, you have been focused in a lot of your reporting on adoption and particularly religious-based foster care and adoptions. Mm-hmm. Why has this drawn your attention? Well,
a couple of years ago, I realized after 2 decades of writing about pro-life issues, we don't talk enough about adoption and foster care, right? And this is a problem because there are birth mothers who don't appreciate what heroes there are. There are pregnant women who don't appreciate that there are couples who would do anything for a child. Yeah. This is a problem because there are children in foster care that none of us think about, generally speaking. Yeah. And so yeah, I just think it's really important, and particularly Catholics, you know, because we have such a rich history in adoption and foster care. But in recent years, right, so many Catholic charities and other faith-based entities have gotten out of it because of clashes with the government and laws. And so we have to start rethinking what this looks like. And I think evangelicals have an advantage over us. And so I've been trying to bring evangelicals and Catholics together. The advantage is they don't think bureaucratically in the way that we do. So we give money to a cardinal's appeal or whatever it is, and we assume someone's taking care of all the needs, right? Evangelicals have one church. They have to look around their community to see what the needs are. And so they have lots of models that I think Catholic parishes should start looking at in a new way. And I think Catholic parishes really have to start thinking in terms of, all right, who are we and what can we do, and not rely on, you know, the bishop has to do something, or and so I just think adoption and foster care is an area where we really have to be thinking more.
The Trump HHS department recently changed a rule that spoke to these foster care and religiously based adoption agencies, that they can, based on their religious beliefs, decide who to place a child with. This is Vice President Mike Pence talking about that rule change. Watch.
We reversed the rule implemented in the closing days of the last administration that jeopardized the ability of faith-based providers to serve those in need by penalizing them for their deeply held religious beliefs. The truth is, 4 out of 5 families have pointed to faith and church support as a factor in successful fostering. And I'll make you one more promise. Child welfare providers will never be forced to choose between their faith and serving those in need. Not on our watch.
Kathryn, what difference will this make tangibly in the function and running of these faith-based adoption agencies or foster care agencies?
Well, right now it doesn't tie the hands anymore of faith-based entities. Of course, the problem is when the Trump administration ends or Republicans aren't in power, what is this going to look like? So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of educating people on this, and people need to be looking at the faces of these children who are in the system, but also need to appreciate that, you know, we're not going to solve all of our differences in the lifespan of the chance that these kids have, right? And one of the most encouraging things that actually I've experienced in the course of doing this over the last couple of years is I had a forum at the National Review Institute after the Catholic prayer breakfast one year, 2 years ago, and Walter Olson, a libertarian who works at the Cato Institute, who's married to a man who's adopted, said to me, we need religious entities in this area, and I'm fighting for your freedom alongside you. And we need more coalitions like that of people who can agree to disagree on even fundamentals, because right now, you know, we need to help these kids, and I think it's really important, you know, like with some of these transgendered issues and whatnot, we're seeing some interesting coalitions, and people appreciating their fundamental fundamental freedoms here and dignity of human life, right? These children flourish if they're in a family. They don't if they're stuck in the system. And so we've got to help them.
The numbers are pretty staggering. I mean, over 400,000 children in the United States are in foster care. More than 100,000 are adoptable. What's the obstacle?
Right. Well, first of all, because not many of us are thinking about this. I mean, there really needs to be a culture change. But the hopeful thing about those numbers is that if every church every Christian church in the United States made this a priority, one family in every church. We're not saying everyone needs to adopt. Not everyone's called to do this, right? But do you know who the families in your parish are who have adopted children, who are foster parents, who do respite care?
Right.
Many of us don't. And that's the problem, because there's a role for all of us in this.
Right.
Providing date nights for the foster parents, making food once a week, getting a schedule together to help these families, because often these families are dealing with children who have deep trauma issues, sometimes mental illness because of opioid addiction and all these terrible things that may have happened to them. And so we need a culture change.
Yeah. I want to talk about the book for a moment. Now, St. Benedict's Press have been for years releasing these A Year With series, and it's a year with this one and a year with that one. How did you, first of all, get attached to this project, A Year with the Mystics, and why did you want to do this?
Well, I had been interviewing previous collators of these books, and I talked to Paul Thigpen. He did The Saints and Mary, I think, and I said, and he was an editor there at the time, and I said, you guys really need to do. I think I suggested the women mystics, and so they said, yeah, well, we've been wanting you to do a book, so why don't you do that? And I came up with lots of reasons for me not to, but I eventually wound up doing it, and I'm really grateful because I spent a lot of time with these holy people.
Why the mystics? Why focus
well,
on and they're not all, we should stipulate. Some of the people you mentioned in the book, some are living, they are certainly spiritually advanced, but they're not all mystics qua mystic.
Well, we think of like John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila as mystics, right? Doctors of spirituality, right? Kathryn of Siena, another one who's in there. But I thought it was really important, like the Catechism talks about mysticism as union with God. That's the journey of our lives. Everyone's called to it, to whatever degree whatever God wants to do with it, right? We just need to give God time. And so I thought it was important to include Elizabeth Ann Seton, who we know from schools and hospitals doing stuff, right? And then Mother Cabrini, the patron saint of immigrants, and your beloved Mother Angelica.
Mother Angelica made the cut on page 157, I might add, for those of you.
Taken just directly from one of your books.
Well, she was special, and I love the moment. The selection you chose from her was about living a life in prayer.
Right.
How do you live actively ceaseless prayer, which was a big deal for her, and for all of us, because in fact it's something we rarely talk about.
Right. We never talk about it. Exactly. And nothing that she did, we would not be sitting here right now, Raymond, if it weren't for her prayer life, right? She knew Jesus in a way that we're supposed to, but many of us don't. And so I wanted the book to be an encouragement to people, and because it's a one-a-day format, there's never more than 400 words on a page. This is something you can do. Our friend Gary Jansen wrote a book that was the 15-minute prayer solution. He points out that 1% of the day is 15 minutes. Everybody can give God 15 minutes. 1% of the day.
It's the least you can do. You talked in an interview about a lot of noise in the world and the feeling that you're alone. What does one find in those moments of prayer once you dedicate yourself to it?
Well, especially when you really focus, as some of these saints, Gertrude the Great comes to mind, really focused on Jesus on the cross. Look at Jesus on the cross. And when you start to really go deeper into that love, how can you think that you're alone, right? I mean, he died for you, and I just think it's so important. I mean, everybody's talking about the epidemic of loneliness, right? Yeah. Suicide is everywhere, it seems, and this is part of the solution. I mean. And I'm not downplaying people need medical help, obviously, for clinical depression and mental illness and stuff. But if all of us who are Christian, who say that we love and want to serve God, if we live this life more, if we really give him time and really seek his will, things look different. You know, you treat people differently.
How did you choose which mystics to include?
Well, some of it is sort of a lifetime of tearing meditations out of Magnificat and bookmarking books, and at the end of the day, to be honest with you, it's 365, and
Right.
I was like doing my job while I was doing this.
Yeah.
There are priests in New York, maybe they're watching, New York and Washington, who think that I'm a homeless person with a laptop. I don't know where they think I charge my laptop, but I sat in front of the Blessed Sacrament and I just, please guide me. And so at the end, hopefully it's his order, not mine.
What do you want people to take from this?
Well, I want them to come to know God more and see him everywhere. And I think when...
To use it as a field guide almost.
Yeah. And I think it opens... those meditations have opened my eyes and my heart. And I see people in the world differently. And I have a big beat up copy. It is really indestructible because I put it through a lot in my purse. But I'm using it every day, and I'm just tremendously grateful for the opportunity.
Well, if any editor can return to the work and still be edified by it, that's a great work.
Well, it also means I had nothing to do with it.
Exactly. Kathryn Lopez, great to see you.
Raymond.
Thank you for being here. A Year with the Mystics, Visionary Wisdom for Daily Living by Kathryn Lopez is available everywhere and online.